I'm going to be breaking down a section that is quite often spoken about, and I get a lot of questions about this. Um, yeah, so welcome to a series where I am going to deep dive into more education from a visual point of view. So I'm going to try and break down things a little bit more so you can understand how I look at price action on a day to day basis. You can also see what I do, how I trade, etc. I think a really good example of what I go through on a day to day basis um, came from EU this week. I know we had spoken about this in the Discord, and we were trying to just kind of break down what was happening from a price action point of view. Um, and I think that's the most important part, right? I think it's really key to understand where you are in terms of the higher time frame and where price is going, and not really get too caught up on the lower time frame, and yeah, just understand exactly where we are, where price could be potentially moving to and from. So I think this is quite an interesting one, right? So we had this really big move in the beginning of August. Um, I kind of like to trade based on, what the actual pro versus counter trend is. So this is a great example of exactly that. We can see we are quite bullish on the higher time frame. And as price is kind of chopping around in this range, so for example, if I had to just mark out this area here, and I had to mark out this area here, you can see how we had pretty much tapped into this lower quartile of the 50% discounted area, and price was pretty much tapping into this displacement here, and then you really just had a sweep of Monday's low, and we were looking to kind of push higher. So yes, we were looking for some setups here to potentially go lower. The only real time I think we, especially from my side, I look to play counter trend moves is because I think maybe price could get a bit more discounted. So here we just had an initial tap, right? And sometimes you only really see, price aggressively start to move higher once we had maybe, chopped a little bit around down here some more, for example, and then look to start moving higher again. So, for example, if you have a look at this area down here, that would have been something that I've been quite interested in. Why am I interested in this? So, quite simple. It's a really simple theory, really, if you want to think about it. Uh, Pretty much based on the concept of supply and demand. I only really look to take trades out of areas where I can see some sort of. So, if we had to really analyze and look at this, for example, you can see how price action chopped around here previously, took out these lows, and then pushed higher. So, why is this a point of interest for me? Because of this initial sweep here, which was then followed by this big push up, which broke structure, took out all of these highs on the left. So, in essence, this would be my demand area that I would be interested in. However, it's not to say that price won't, or does price doesn't have to come this deep to then continue higher. However, if you look at the first sort of tap, you can kind of see how we get a really, really strong reaction out of here. The only reason I was really looking for shorts is because we were still in this sort of 1 hour sort of downtrend, if you want to call it that. So there was this move here, which we were looking to play on Monday and Tuesday. We got one on Tuesday eventually, finally. And if you have a look here now, so price for me is only confirmed to like trend higher once this high had broken here. And if we had seen that break in structure, then we would obviously want to play something like that. So Monday kind of was the deciding factor. Do we break above, chop around a bit, and then continue higher? Or do we hold in this area now, look to potentially take this low and then go higher? Or do we hold this area and, come find something down here? Price can move however it wants to. And that pretty much is it. So I think in a nutshell, um, that's how I analyze stuff on the high time frame. I don't really try break things down, that extensively. Otherwise, you run the risk of analysis paralysis, which I've seen many traders do. So breaking this down, you could see this was quite a nice sort of point of interest. We had this shift in structure. I'm basically just breaking down the H1 area. So I'm now on the M15, but if you look here, for example, you can analyze and see how we had this nice sort of range building. We kind of didn't come in here too aggressively. We came in nice and slowly. We chopped around. This is like perfect. I love it when price does this because you can catch these moves quite easily when price just kind of goes in. Let me try to show you visually what I mean. So when price does this and then comes in quite aggressively the next day, it's always good to just be a bit wary of when you start taking your first entries versus when you start taking your second entries, for example. Okay, cool. So to pick up where I left off on, so pretty much the idea is you don't really want to be playing something that's coming quite aggressively into a POI or some sort of previous day highly sweep or whatever it may be that you're looking for. So you kind of want something that like chops up slowly and it builds liquidity, right? Because on the way down, you've then got something to pretty much target. And like if you understand the concepts and what I try to teach, you're pretty much looking for this sort of reaction and then you're going back down. If that makes sense. So keeping in mind these areas of interest we had marked up earlier this week, this was all for setups that were, against the trend. There was a potential for it to potentially get down here. However, price had already swept here and could have literally carried on trading high come Monday morning, Tuesday, for example, which in the end of the week it did eventually end up doing. But I just want to break through something I noticed in my sort of setups and the way in which I've been trading. So if you have a look here, right, starting from the basics, you pretty much have a buildup of liquidity on either side. And whatever that liquidity may be, I kind of want to maybe stray away from specifically only getting you guys to identify, say, previous daily high, previous daily low, but rather look at the bigger picture, like what is actually going on. And if you have a look at this setup, for example, it was really nicely displayed. I think a lot of people got caught in this trade on Friday afternoon. And that's okay. It was quite, I think some guys might have got caught in something like this on Monday too. Not really like getting significant structure breaks, right? There's your actual low. These are all internal. So Yeah, once I had seen, I think it was Monday afternoon, I had seen this clear of this high. I'd seen a tap into this POI that I'd marked out, and I was looking for price to kind of trickle down a little bit further, potentially look for something down here and then catch some longs. If you then analyze what's happening here, this is valid. The only thing that I could think of that like wasn't like to the T was the displacement of the placement, sorry, of where your Asia range was in the scenario. And we already were coming quite late into Monday afternoon. So I know in my head that there's a high chance that come late New York session, if I'm getting an entry, I'm most likely going to just either get taken out overnight or we take it on Monday morning in any case. So it's just something to keep in the back of your head when taking setups. This was clean. I liked it. Kind of stuck with my guns. Try to hold it through. I think it literally took me out within the space of like 2 minutes or so. Is what it is. Again, placement of Asia range, but on the low side. Considering we already tried to take the low here, didn't really do anything significant. Again, if you're looking at structure points, that is your external. Might have been a bit early on the internal, but that's okay. Depends on what you like. So that was the trade I took on Monday. If you play it over into the next day, I kind of let price just develop a bit overnight. I wanted to see what would happen on Tuesday morning. And we then had a pretty much a similar scenario. So for me, there was one or two things that were going to happen. We were either going to sweep this high over here and then potentially look to continue going further down, or we were just going to blast through it and push higher. And I really like the look of all of this resting liquidity sitting here, purely because this is really good targets on the way down, right? There's sometimes, price will just literally plummet through. But if you look here, you can see all these really key points where price could potentially turn from on the way down. And those ultimately are your sort of target areas, right? So this is the trade that I took on Tuesday, I think it was. So pretty much was looking for some sort of sweep. We got a sweep here again. I think that was Monday's high in any case, which is great. That's perfect. Then we also had taken Asia range. Coming into London, we had already had a pretty aggressive move out. Now, you could have done one of two things, right? So I normally wait for London Open before making any decisions. So for me, this was quite interesting. I had seen that on the M15, structure had shifted. This ultimately now was going to be my protected high because I'm pretty much playing this sort of pattern, which is like my optimal entry model, if you want to call it that. You can do whatever you want if you want to add sort of fibs in there or whatever it may be that makes you feel comfortable. It can be 50% of the last buy to sell move, whatever it may be. So that's pretty much what I'm looking for. We got that break. I then saw, I think if I had to slow this down, price was kind of hanging around. Yeah, I think it was just prior to the open. Yeah, so I think it was about probably like 3 minutes before the close, to be honest, aka open of London. For me, I'm happy to kind of take a risk on that. I think I got a late entry around here, there, 8344. That was my entry. at a stop at about, I think it was about 8 pips, right? And then I was just targeting my 2R standard. But at the same time, I was quite obviously observant of all these little liquidity pockets on the way down. There was the potential for price to just kind of slam into them, turn. And obviously, this is quite a nice example because there was a few times where price was taking out these areas and then pretty much turning, right? So if that's how you want to play your partial strategy, that's also cool. Um, and then yeah, rolled quite nicely. We took Asia low. I think a lot of people got a bit nervous when it popped back up. It's okay though. Like if this ultimately is your protected high over here, and you've had your sweep, which was the clearing of this Asia high here, right? Then there is no reason for you to be stressed right now. And I will often find sometimes that I have to like reiterate this to myself that, if this is my protected high, why am I stressing? Price can literally do whatever it wants. It can come back down here. It can nearly take me out, and then it can continue lower if it wants, right? So it's just something with time, you got to just kind of figure out what works for you. Um, I decided to leave the entry. There was no news in the morning besides the afternoon. Um, I took some partials here on the first sort of tap of like, external liquidity, if you want to call internal liquidity, if you want to call it that. And then the full 2R hit for me, which was quite nice. It's been bit of a long time since we've actually had a pretty good clean trade like this. And you can see how we were reacting off all of these areas right now. For me, over time, I've just understood where these pockets sit. Um, but I often sometimes just use pretty much an OTE tool on here, which kind of measures the distance going down. So you have pretty much your standard deviation 1 and a deviation 2, 3, 4. And you see how we pretty much ended up tapping on this fourth standard deviation, which then meant that price, reverse from there. So those are just some key things. And I know there was a couple guys in the Discord saying, "Oh, let's try run this down to, some crazy lows." And that is why you need to be so strict on how you partial and how you take your profit and take something from the market, because when you let greed and your emotions kind of kick in, that's when you start to miss out on opportunities. And it took me really long to figure out, that a 2 to 1 is really profitable and really optimal. And you'll see results from that in the longer run. Just don't get, sort of caught up in the hype of what is going on around you. And yeah, I think this is a great example because if you weren't taking partials on the way down, you would have got either taken out for a loss or you would have got taken out at break even. I think this is on the news release. So a really good example. I didn't have any other setups for the rest of the week. That was pretty much the only thing that was of interest to me. Nice learning experience. Um, yeah, I think for the week ahead, I'll rather try stay away from forecasting and rather do recaps like this. So you can at least learn from the sort of markups I do within the Discord, and you can get an understanding for, for example, if you go into this technical analysis section, I will carry on doing things how I have been here. I'll either be adding in, sort of market recaps like this, or forecasts, very high level. And then I'll also keep the learning aspect. And I hope that kind of helps with your learning a little bit out as well. But yeah, that's pretty much it from my side. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the weekend. Look forward to this week. I think we've got some. I don't think we have much news this week, so I'll just keep an eye out on that and let you guys know. But for the most part, yeah, trade safe, and we'll be a bit more active in the Discord this week. So yeah, hope you guys enjoy.